Hi boys and girls, welcome back to Mr. Brakefield Reads. Today is Sunday, which means it is our chapter book day. Now last week we finished the Twits, so today we need a brand new chapter book, and I have it right here. It is The Hodgeheg by Dick King-Smith. It's an absolute classic of a book. Some of you might have a copy at home. If you do, you can get that copy out. You can read along with me if you'd like to. If not, then you can settle down somewhere comfortable and simply listen to the story and enjoy it. Now, I hope many of you are reading at home. I hope many of you are reading the books that you've got at home. I know lots of you have got a fantastic collection of books at home, and I hope you're enjoying reading. The main thing is that we enjoy what we read and that we enjoy reading. And many of you in year 2 now will be really comfortable with reading, will feel really confident, and will be able to read many, many words, and will be able to read books that are way beyond year 2. And I know that same goes for some children in year 1 as well. But one important thing about reading is that it's great to read, of course, to actually read ourselves and read out loud and to read to others and to read in our heads. But it's also very important to listen to books too, okay? And so this is what my channel is about you being able to listen to books, even if those books are books that you wouldn't be able to read on your own because they'd be slightly too difficult. But it's really good to have a story time. So as much as you'll watch my videos, I know that your mums and dads will be reading books to you as well, books at bedtime, books at all different times in the day, I'm sure. But please make sure that you get the chance to listen to books as well as reading yourself. Okay. So let's get straight into the book in chapter 1. Your Auntie Betty has copped it, said Pa, Hedgehog to Ma. Oh no, cried Ma. Where? Just down the road, opposite the newsagent's. Bad place to cross, that. Everywhere's a bad place to cross nowadays, said Ma. The traffic's dreadful. Do you realise, Pa, that's the 3rd this year, and all on my side of the family too. First there was grandfather, then my second cousin once removed, and now poor old Auntie Betty. They were sitting in a flower bed at their home, the garden of number 5A of a row of semi-detached houses in a suburban street. On the other side of the road was a park, very popular with local hedgehogs on account of the good hunting it offered. As well as worms and slugs and snails, which they could find in their own gardens, there were special attractions in the park. Mice lived under the bandstand, feasting on the crumbs dropped from listeners' sandwiches. Frogs dwelt in the lily pond, and in the ornamental gardens grass snakes slithered through the shrubbery. All these creatures were regarded as great delicacies by the hedgehogs, and they could never resist the occasional night sport in the park. But to reach it, they had to cross the busy road. Poor old Auntie Betty, said Ma again. It's a hard life, and that's flat. It's a hard death, said Pa sourly, and that's flat too. Talk about squash, the poor old girl was... Shh, said Ma at the sound of approaching footsteps. Not in front of the children. As up trotted 4 small figures, exact miniatures of their parents, except for their spines, that were still greyish rather than brown. 3 of them were little sows, named by Ma, who was fond of flowers, Peony, Pansy and Petunia. Pa had agreed reluctantly to these names, but had insisted upon his own choice for the 4th, a little boar. Boys, he said, needed noble-sounding names, and the 4th youngster was therefore called Victor Maximilian St. George, or Max for short. Almost from the moment his eyes had opened, while his prickles were still soft and rubbery, Max had shown promise of being a bright boy, and by now his eyes, his ears, and his wits were all as sharp as his spines. What are you talking about, Ma? He said. Nothing, said Ma hastily. You wouldn't be talking about nothing, said Max, or there wouldn't be any point in talking. Don't be cheeky, said Pa, and mind your own business. Well, I suppose it is their business really, Pa, isn't it? Said Ma, or soon will be. They're bound to go exploring outside our garden before long, and we must warn them. You're right, said Pa. Now then, you kids, just listen to me. And he proceeded to give his children a long lecture about the problems of road safety for hedgehogs. Max listened carefully, Then he said, "Do humans cross the road?" "I suppose so," said Pa. "But they don't get killed?" "Don't think so," said Pa. "Never seen one lying in the road, which I would have if they did." "Well then," said Max, "how do they get across safely?" "You tell me, son. You tell me," said Pa. "I will," said Max. "I will." Chapter 2. Max began his research the very next day. He slipped out of the garden at dusk, ambled along the path by the side wall of number 5A, and crept under the front gate. Immediately he found himself in a sea of noise. It was the evening rush hour, and the home-going traffic was at its heaviest. Cars and motorbikes, buses and lorries thundered past, terrifyingly close it seemed to him, as he crouched outside the gate, and he was confused and dazzled by their lights. The street lamps, too, lit up the place like day, and Max, nocturnal by nature, made for the darkest spot he could find, in the shadow of a tall litter bin, and crouched there with hammering heart. Gradually, he grew a little more accustomed to the din and the glare, and, though he dared not move, began to observe the humans, for numbers of pedestrians passed close by him. They were all walking on a narrow road, on which he sat, a road raised above the level of the street itself, by about the height of a hedgehog. "They're safe," said Max to himself, "because the noisy monsters aren't allowed up there." He looked across the street and could see that at the far side of it there were other humans also walking safely on a similar raised road. He did not, however, happen to see any cross the street. "But they must cross somewhere," said Max. "There must be a place further along the street." A part of him, for he was very young, said that he would find out about that another time, and that it would be nice to creep back under the gate to his family. But then another part of him, determined to set off to see if he could find this human crossing place. And so he did. Now that is what Max was looking at. Looking at the street, looking at people on the side that he's at, but also the other side too. Perhaps what he thinks is a road might well be the pavement. The street was on a slight slope, and perhaps because of this, Max chose to go in the downhill direction. He moved very slowly, keeping close to the outer walls of the front gardens where there was some shadow, and he froze, stock still, whenever a human passed. No one noticed him. Soon the houses gave way to a short row of shops, one of them that very newsagent's opposite which his great-aunt Betty had breathed her last, and here his progress was more difficult. The shops were still open, and Max had to choose his moment to make a dash across each brightly lit entrance. "Phew! This is tiring. Perhaps I should go back home," he said. But then suddenly, not far ahead, he saw what he was seeking. There were humans crossing the street, sometimes singly, sometimes in twos and threes, sometimes in quite large groups. They stepped down from the narrow raised road and walked straight across the street, with hardly a look to left or right, and stepped up again on the far side, and off they went. And every time that anyone wanted to cross, all the traffic stopped and waited respectfully until the way was clear again. This, then, was the magic place. Here, humans could cross in perfect safety. If humans can, why not hedgehogs? Reasoned Max. That's what Max is looking at now, which we know is a crossing. But how do people know the exact spot? How do the cars and lorries know when to stop? Cautiously, he shuffled nearer, keeping close to the wall, until he found himself beside a tall, checkered pole on top of which was a glowing orange globe. Across the street, he could see, was a similar pole, and between these two poles the humans walked while the traffic waited. Biding his time till a moment when there was no one about, Max crept forward to the edge of the raised road and peered down at the surface of the street. It was striped. It was striped black and white, all the way from one side to the other. This was the secret. Well, we'll leave it there for now, but on Wednesday we'll catch up again with what Max is getting up to. and see if he can make any sense of what's happening around him. Will he understand exactly what humans do when they cross the road? And will he be able to share some of that information with Ma and Pa to help hedgehogs stay safer? Anyway, we'll find out that on Wednesday. But before that, I'd like you to enjoy your reading at home, but also to stay safe and make sure you're keeping really busy and doing lots of great things. Not just schoolwork, but also getting the chance to relax and also getting the chance to do some really creative things as well. And if you've got anything that you've done already that you want to show me, which has been inspired perhaps by the twits or by some of the things that we've been reading, then I would love to see it and I will show it on this channel. All right. So in the meantime, happy reading, and I will see you Wednesday. Bye, boys and girls.